I don't know what to say for the intro of this one, so I'm just gonna get right to it. I watched the movie Nobody, starring Bob Odenkirk in the lead role. I was very much interested in this movie ever since the release, but I kind of hesitated a bit because there was news that there was going to be a crossover between this film and John Wick. And I wanted to finish John Wick off before watching this one, and then that took a little bit of time, and then I eventually forgot about this film. So I haven't been able to watch it until now. So Nobody is a very entertaining film, and if you watch this, you're going to be thoroughly entertained. If you're a fan of action movies, if you liked John Wick, even the first 3 John Wick movies, you're going to enjoy this one, and it's very entertaining flick, and the performances are great. Everyone does their job well, but the star of the show is definitely Bob Odenkirk. I'm not familiar with him as an actor, but it's very interesting the take he went with this role, because there are things in this movie that are very similar to John Wick, but the way his character is portrayed makes it seem like there's some slight variation to the execution, at least, because here he's a family man, and it's his show all the way. He carries this movie, and the way he interacts with the rest of the crew is very entertaining. The dialogues are very intriguing, I will say, and the action scenes with him is great. I especially love the action scenes in this movie, particularly because it shows the character's vulnerability to a huge extent, because in this movie Bob Odenkirk is not portrayed as this unstoppable force or like a mass Telugu star, you know. He's not portrayed as a Superman level character, or like a mass Telugu hero, you know. When you see the way he fights, although he never loses his confidence, which I admire, there are times where he gets like he gets his ass kicked, he's pinned to the ground, you see him beaten, you see him bloodied. I love that he's just not him fighting 10 people at once and not getting a single scratch. It's never like that, and each and every fight shows him being vulnerable to some extent, and that's the one thing I very much enjoyed. And I have heard several people talking about the comedy in this film. I, for one, have a less popular opinion. I did not connect with the comedy at all. It was fine, is what I would say, because I don't know, I just couldn't connect to it. But if you connected with the comedy, let me know in the comments below what you thought of the comedy in this film, whether you laughed, because for some reason it just didn't connect with me. But everything else, the way he emotes, like there's a scene in which like after a while, after a certain event happens in the film, his wife, everything just goes back to normal for some time, and then the wife again says that you forgot to take out the garbage on time, and then he gives her this look, and every single thing that needs to be conveyed is conveyed through that look. That takes skill, man. Without saying a single dialogue, just from a look, he tells his wife what's up. And she gets it. That's skill, man. It takes real skill to write scenes like that, or execute something to that level. And this movie just went with it, and it was great to watch on screen. I also liked Connie Nielsen, who portrays Odenkirk's wife in this movie. I felt like she brought a bit of mystery to the role, and while you do find some stuff about Odenkirk's character throughout the film, her character still has a big level of mystery to it. It's very mysterious who she was during Odenkirk's, former years, and how they met, everything. There's a lot to be explored there, and if this becomes a successful franchise, I feel like this is one thing that the studio can delve into, like going more into her character, making her the focus and developing a story based on that, like who was she before, Is she a fighter or is she like a medic or something? Because she knows who Odenkirk is, and the way they speak in this film makes it seem like they have history in the field together. So I'm not sure, and that is something, if this becomes a successful franchise, the studio can delve into, making a spin-off film with her as the main focus and delving more into who she is, how she got married to Odenkirk, that all those things, and how both of them decided to keep that a secret up until that point. Exploring her character, that would be very intriguing. That's something which I think can be done very well. The other highlight of the film, aside from Odenkirk, Christopher Lloyd is like, at the beginning, you feel nothing, but as the movie progresses, he does some stuff in the film, and it's awesome. I'm not gonna spoil for you what that is. You have to watch this film to find out what. Some of the best scenes happen with Christopher Lloyd. After a while, when certain things escalate and when he is brought into the movie more, it's very entertaining, is what I will say. It's gold when his stuff happens. Not in the beginning, but as the movie progresses, you will find, you be. I don't know what to say, because without spoiling anything. So you just have to watch the movie to figure that out. But yeah, it's some of the best things in the film. I also like the choice of music that they decided to go with. Before I go into negatives, I want to say one thing. The writer of this movie is the same guy who wrote the story for the first 3 John Wick films. So that was one of the reasons I wanted to wait it out a little bit before, because in case if a crossover was happening, this is the era of cinematic universes. It could still happen if the studios decided to cooperate with each other, strike a deal or something. It could happen, and after watching the movie, I was even more intrigued about the idea of a crossover between Odenkirk's character fighting Keanu Reeves' character, John Wick. It would be very interesting, because at first I was thinking, because the initial fight that happens in the bus, it takes around 20 to 30 minutes for the first action scene to happen. Before that, it's all the setup, what is his life, and then it's the setup. It takes 20 to 30 minutes for that, and once it gets to the bus scene where the first action scene happens, initially I was like, a crossover might be a bad idea, because the way he's fighting, John Wick would take him out within seconds if that's his fighting capabilities. But once the fight progresses, once the movie progresses, as he becomes more and more efficient in fighting, once you get to the climax, by the time you get to the climax, you can kind of see that a potential crossover might work. It's something that I'm hopeful for. May not happen, I'm not sure, but there's a lot of things that are similar in this movie to John Wick, so I'm just being hopeful, I'm just being an optimist. But if it does happen, it's a first day, first show, man. I will be going to theaters for that. Okay, so now I'm getting to the negatives. The biggest negative for me, the major issue that I have with the film, is the villain. I did not like the villain in this movie. I felt like his character is pretty weak. His performance is fine, but as a character, he was very, very weak. There wasn't much to him, and it didn't seem like he was a worthy rival to Odenkirk's character. And it just kind of happens. It's similar to John Wick, how both of them become rivals. And there was this huge build up to his character, the villain's character, which I, after watching the movie, felt like really, I felt like the build up just didn't match with the execution. That's my major issue with the film. The rest of these are tiny inconveniences, from a narrative perspective, from a storytelling perspective, this movie doesn't flow as well as the first John Wick, and I question the memorability of this. What I mean is that I don't know if you'll be able to remember this movie in the future. I just don't feel like there wasn't anything memorable or anything that memorable in this movie aside from the bus scene. It's just what I think at the moment. I'm not sure, but I don't know if this movie becomes as memorable further down the line. And my only other minor inconvenience would be with the motivation of Odenkirk's character. I felt like his motivation to get back into the field was pretty weak. With the John Wick franchise, the first installment, it was a very strong motivation. Like, the dog represents something personal to him, and that's why he comes back into the field, and then that's why the entire franchise happens. You get the reason why. You immediately connect with it. In here, I don't see myself connecting with it as much. There wasn't really anything that strong for Odenkirk to come back into the field. It just wasn't as strong as, John Wick or anything. And even the story isn't something new. Like, you've seen the story before, and it even follows some of the similar templates of John Wick. So those are my minor inconveniences. It's something you can overlook when you watch this film because the movie is very entertaining. The Odenkirk's performance alone, it's great. I want to see more of this guy in future films. I'm curious about the sequel that's scheduled to come this year. So I guess I'll be watching that as well. And I kind of want to know where this franchise will go and whether or not in the future it might result in a crossover or not. I'm just being an optimist for that because it's it's something that I want to be hopeful for, and it's very entertaining. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered even after the ending. There's a lot of potential with this franchise. This could easily become another franchise, and there's a lot of potential for that. There are a few characters in this film that can have their own spin-off films and then explore it more, especially with the wife character. The possibilities are endless, and I hope that the next ones in the installments are of similar quality. It's very entertaining despite some of the minor inconveniences, and it's good enough that most people who watch this movie will be very entertained by it, and I really hope you give this a watch before the sequel comes out. So if you haven't watched it yet, I highly recommend you watch it, and I will see you in the next video.
Girl, you shut me down and there's no witness. Got me in my feels, she would never listen. All the alcohol is in my liver. I guess I lost and you're the winner. Missing your touch, you were a good kisser. I was born a saint, but now I'm a sinner. Falling for you.